We're starting with the AFC South, and obviously, kind of like we did last time, we're going from top to bottom from last year's results. Tennessee Titans technically won the division last year. However, they were bounced out of that first round by in the wild card round by the Baltimore Ravens. Remember, I don't know if people remember. That's Baltimore got their revenge. They did they dance on the. I think they did the flapping on the logo.
Yeah.
They showed their stuff. They finally got over the Tennessee hump. But Tennessee's made a lot of moves this offseason. And so, yeah, we'll get into that right now. Obviously, the big one, trading for Julio Jones, I believe is a second and a fourth, correct, for Julio. So not a huge
Hmm.
price. But we're granted, Julio comes with injury concerns we'll talk about in a second. Signed edge rusher Bud Dupree, who probably won't be available till midseason, but if he gets back to the form he was, he could be one of the edge guys that they've been needing for quite some time. Also brought in veteran cornerback Janoris Jenkins, wide receiver Josh Reynolds from the Rams. I think as people remember from the draft, got one of my favorite draft crushes, cornerback Caleb Farley in the first round. And then just other notable picks was defensive back Elijah Molden, who can play a Honey Badgerish role. Not saying he's gonna be Honey Badger, but saying can play a role like him that can play safety but be in the slot. Probably not as good in the box as Honey Badger, but and then other rookie that they got was one of my favorite edge guys, Rashad Weaver in the fourth round, who mainly fell. I think had some domestic violence thing come up or something off the field. So obviously that's not good, but it seems that they figured that out. But he did fall in the draft because of that. But otherwise, I think he already had a sack in his first preseason game. He's already pretty disruptive. Uh, so those are really the big additions for the Tennessee Titans. They did lose a lot though. Lost Jadeveon Clowney, even though he really didn't do much. Cornerback Malcolm Butler lost Corey Davis to the Jets. Another wide receiver and Adam Humphries. Also let go of cornerback Adoree Jackson. And then the bigger loss to his tight end Jonnu Smith went to the Patriots. And then lost interior defensive lineman Daquan Jones. And then kind of the more surprising cut/loss was right tackle Isaiah Wilson, their first round pick from the previous year. Who I don't even know what he's doing right now, but there's obviously some off the field stuff that they had to let him go for. So, yeah. And all in all, John, what were your thoughts on the Titans offseason and how it's going to affect them going into this season?
The Titans are weird, I think, compared to most. Why are you smiling? You're freaking me out every
No,
time
no,
you
you're
smile.
fine. You're fine. It's just
Okay,
I
just
thought the same. That's like the theme I feel like for this division. So the fact that
yeah.
you just immediately start out, I feel like okay. In my
Okay.
head, I was like, don't say. I can't keep mentioning that because I'm going to say that for every team in this
Yeah,
division.
but they're weird because like they lost a lot of players who were very important to their team, but at the same time also don't feel like incredibly vital to their team, right? Like Corey Davis had a really good year last year, but overall, I think you would say that his time in Tennessee was probably a disappointment
For a top 10
based on where
pick,
he was
absolutely.
drafted. Yeah, like he was drafted to be basically what AJ Brown has become, maybe even probably better.
Yeah.
And he just wasn't that. Obviously, I think last year was his best year, but at that point, it's like,
Contract year?
yeah,
You
like
don't know.
you don't know. Like, I think they made the right move not signing him long term
Yep.
because he got paid, and you've seen him over the last few years, and really he didn't give you what you wanted. Like you said, Jadeveon Clowney, talented guy, but he played what 3 games, and he got hurt. He didn't really do anything for them, so
Yep.
that's not a tough one. Then like Malcolm Butler, a solid corner, but didn't blow you away. Adoree Jackson, once again, solid corner.
Didn't
I
live up
think,
to the first round billing that he also was
yeah,
drafted at, too.
I think he's a little overrated by fans just because he's really fast. He can make some highlight plays, but
Great Madden player.
yeah,
That's
really
why
good
he's
Madden.
overrated, I think. This is all the
Um,
Madden people love him.
yeah, but on the field, I mean, he never was a true number one corner. There's still even questions about him being a number two. In the right defense, like the Giants, I think he can have success, but that's a different episode. And then their additions, I mean, Julio Jones, that's a big get, but at the same time, he is getting older. He has had some injury issues. But in this system, it should take a lot of weight off his shoulders. The Falcons, he was the guy. In Tennessee, we know that Derrick Henry's the guy. AJ Brown's really solid. So Julio, at best, he's your number two option, but he doesn't even have to be because AJ Brown can still produce like the best receiver on the team. Bud Dupree, like you said, another injured guy, kind of like Jadeveon Clowney was. So it like everything just feels weird about them. Honestly, the only moves I really love was their draft. I liked both DBs. They took a lot. I thought that was just great investment from them. I'm a fan of when teams go heavy in one position group to really just get guys that can make an impact now. And I know my Cowboys did that with Chidobe Awuzie and Jordan Lewis. Both turned out to be solid producers for the picks that they were. I think Farley's obviously better than both of those guys. I think that Molden should be a solid pick, like you said. He's pretty versatile. So, yeah, I liked their draft, but at the same time, I don't know if they really necessarily got better. Like, I would say they're kind of just like the same. Like, I could see them getting another 11 win season, maybe 12 because of the extra game. Not maybe that that they'd be a first round exit, but I don't think they've become more of a Super Bowl contender, if that makes sense. Like, I think they're just about as good as they were, with the potential to be better, if certain health things work out in their favor, right? Like, if Julio Jones can play the full year healthy, that's obviously a big addition. If Caleb Farley is what most people expect him to be and has no health concerns at all, that should be big. Certain stuff like that. So I think, as of right now, I would say I still think they're probably the favorites to win the division. Once again, another 11, 12 win season around there. But in the grand scheme of the AFC, I don't know if they've moved up the totem pole for me.
Yeah, so it's tough. I think, yeah, like you mentioned, biggest thing, especially on offense, really no improvement outside of obviously adding Julio Jones. But I think the reason too that it's important that the price that to make note of the price they paid for Julio, wasn't that much, and that's because, especially, I owned Julio Jones in fantasy last year. It's my first time with the Julio Jones experience. I can only imagine what it is for a team. I mean, because for the most part, he wouldn't practice during the week, just because of rest, because he had injuries, and then it was really just came down to Sunday warm-ups. How you feeling? I'm not saying he's faking injury or anything. I'm just saying, like, especially at this point in his career, the physical receiver he is, the injuries have added up, and he's basically kind of like how similar. I think Megatron did the same kind of had the same
Right.
kind of, I guess, practice. Practice, I guess, routines later in his career too. So that is definitely a worry. Obviously, though, AJ Brown, I mean, he even played last year on a bad knee, so I think he got surgery on the off season. So even if he's just even as good as he was last year, that's good. Obviously, Derrick Henry's good, but yeah, I am worried on offense. Their offensive line. I mean, they didn't really add anything, lose anybody, but I feel like in recent years the Lions kind of declined slowly and surely, so that could be a concern. But
Yeah,
yeah,
just on the line real quick, I want to add that everyone makes a really big deal about this, that Derrick Henry gets the rushing yards he does without a single Pro Bowl lineman.
yeah,
Like, Taylor Lewan was at one point in his career that level, but like right now, they don't have a single Pro Bowl lineman, and
yeah.
that's the same.
Yeah. So, and then new offensive coordinator too. They lost Arthur Smith. So, is there going to be scheme changes? Is it going to be? I mean, I'm afraid they might fall into the trap that Cleveland did when they had their previous head coach. I'm blanking on his name, but he's only
Freddie
there.
Kitchens.
Freddie Kitchens, where they have Odell, they have Landry, and they're like trying to appease them, and they go pass heavy when it's like, no, your identity, what got you here is the run. So, and I'm not saying they go that passive. I'm just saying that there may be a concern. And then, yeah, obviously on the flip side, their defense, which was their biggest issue last year, surprisingly. I mean, I think they're kind of baking on guys like Jeffrey Simmons, their defensive lineman, him taking the next step, which I think he can. And then obviously some of their draft picks, like I mentioned, Rashad Weaver maybe making an impact. Harold Landry's had some good moments, but not great. And then obviously, like you just mentioned too, with the corners, really hoping that they're hoping that Caleb Farley. I don't know, there were some health concerns. I think he's fine, but Caleb Farley's healthy, and B, as talented as advertised. And then also, yeah, like, and then the veteran additions they added, Janoris Jenkins, such like that, they can just produce, and because they did let go of other veterans, so it is always risky to bring in others. Who knows
Right.
how many years they have left? So yeah, just an odd team, but like with you, especially we'll talk about the Colts in a second and some of the other teams in this division. I expect them to win this division. Now, yeah, and I'm just not sure how much noise they can make in the playoffs, like what you
Right.
said. So I think we're pretty much in the same boat in regards to Tennessee. Um, So, is there anything you wanted to add before we move on to Indianapolis?
I mean, the one thing I will say
Mhm.
is that if like I said earlier, if the guys they added live up to the potential, then I could see them being better in the playoffs. Because I think the two things that have really plagued them in the playoffs last few years is number one, like we talked about, their defense. But as we both talked about on the podcast, we both thought that Caleb Farley, you thought he was the best, I thought he was the second best corner. But you know how high I am on a Patrick Surtain, so that shows you how high I am on Caleb Farley if he's just right behind him. Um, so if he can be that game changing corner, one of those guys who can be like a Tre'Davious White was with his rookie year, Marlon Humphrey, some of these guys that came in instant impact, that's big. We know that Kevin Byard's good, so their defense could take a step. Jeffrey Simmons, like you said, he's another key piece. But then offensively, I I worry they're gonna miss Jonnu Smith a lot more than people realize. I don't know who their
It's
next up
Anthony
tight end is.
Fursker. He filled in. He looked pretty solid when he filled in last year. I think Johnny was out for a game or two.
Right.
Sorry, excuse me. So yeah, he saw. Obviously, he's not as good as Jonnu. Otherwise, he would have started ahead of him. But I don't think there's going to be such a huge drop off. Now, granted,
Right.
I don't know what's behind Ferkser, and that's what you could also is also good to mention is the depth.
Right.
Because tight end's a physical position. So if he gets hurt, he gets banged up. I really don't know who they have behind him, and if they can contribute, as well as he stepped in when
Right.
Johnny was out last year.
Yeah, I mean, if Fursker is his last name, I barely know anything about him. I do remember watching a few Titans games and seeing him, but if he can get involved in the red zone specifically, the only reason I worry about losing Jonnu is that I think he was outside of obviously Derrick Henry for a lot of the year. He was like their main red zone guy, and whether it was Julio Jones or Matt Ryan or whoever, Julio has just not been that guy. And so I view Julio as like your main replacement for Jonnu Smith, to take his targets, his production, all that kind of stuff on top of Corey Davis. Um, so I don't know. That's just my only concern. But like I said, if Julio can play a full year, we know how talented he is and can be. And I do think that unlike the Falcons, I think this is the first time in Julio's career that he's had a running back that can be that kind of a workhorse. Obviously, with Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman, they had that year in the Super Bowl run where those two guys were amazing.
But I think
But
that's more
also,
credit to Kyle Shanahan's run
right,
game, as we found out
yes,
later on. That wasn't
yeah,
just a physical guy it's not a complicated scheme. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to get, you know,
yeah,
almost
yeah.
2,000 yards a year.
I mean, yeah, the Shanahan scheme makes every running system work. And so, yeah, I think that this is the first time that Julio's really had a running back that he can say, like, this guy's a workhorse. And let's be honest, like, Derrick Henry with an extra game is like, it's very likely he gets 2,000 yards again,
Yeah.
which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that the Julio addition could benefit them greatly, but I do worry that a lot of people are overrating it because I think a lot of people instantly moved them up as like maybe
So,
even past the Bills, which I
yeah.
think is kind of crazy. Um, but I know that at least the Vegas betting odds, I don't think the Titans odds moved at all on the year's win total,
Yeah.
adding Julio. So Vegas tends to know a lot more than the casual fan does, and so
Yep.
I'm sort of in that same boat where I think they're just about the same.
Yeah. For anything to regarding that, I'm with you. I typically Vegas knows, like, the
Right.
public, Vegas knows, kind of like in business, kind of follow the money. So, all right. So that's the Titans and what they've done this offseason. So we'll see what they can do during the regular season, see if they can repeat as the division champs, which we both expect them to.